Lynn Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Hello and good morning. It's Monday, May 21, and I'm looking forward to this week. Lots of interesting things going on and certainly things we can talk about. I've been out of town since Thursday. I left right after Thursday's show, and didn't get back till late last night. And I can't say I'm totally up to speed on some of the local issues. I know a big story that broke immediately after I departed was the news that the third Orie sister, the Supreme Court justice, has now been grabbed and brought into the criminal justice system. So we got, what are all their names? They're all Janine, Jane, and who's the Supreme Court justice? Janine, Jane, and and isn't that weird? They're all named Jay, and so is Jail. They're all going to end up there. I'm blanking on her. Something Orie Melvin. Orie Melvin. Can't think. Unbelievable that three sisters could end up in jail. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but three sisters of this status level and coming out of, positions in two of the legislative branches, two of the governmental branches. You can see I did not sleep last night. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to get my head working here. Bear with me. I'm sure I'll wake up in a second or two. So much of the infrastructure in our country is just going to hell. And I would argue that our transportation system is going to hell. Our nation's highways are not being kept up. Our nation's roads and bridges, our rail travel is essentially ludicrous. I mean, it is embarrassingly. To call it third world country is not correct because I've been to third world countries and they have better trains than we do. And then if you travel by air, it is inevitably, it seems, unless it's just me, it's inevitably an adventure and not necessarily a pleasant one at that. But it has gotten to be so that you can't get places from here. It's not like Pittsburgh is a backwater. And to get from Pittsburgh to just about anywhere usually requires a switch of planes to fly to a more important hub city and then find your plane to wherever it is you want to go. And in the case of wanting to go home to see my old mom, this is getting so hard, it's not to mention unbelievably expensive. So that there's no service, essentially, to huge, huge swaths of America. And there is service available if you've got the big bucks to pay for it. But for me now to fly not directly, with a switch of planes from Pittsburgh to Green Bay, costs easily. A good fare would be $750. And those can be very hard to find. That's a lot of change to go check in on your mom who lives there alone. And if you had a significant other or children that you wanted to take as well, I just don't know how people do it. So I guess they drive. But given the price of gas, that would be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars as well. It's very hard I would imagine, for people to get just about anywhere. And as of June 1, I've just learned by reading the paper this morning, the flight that I was on yesterday will be canceled as of June 1. That airline will no longer fly into Wisconsin. And that was the last direct flight from Pittsburgh to anywhere in Wisconsin. It was not Green Bay where I was trying to get. So what I'd been doing is flying that one particular flight to Milwaukee, renting a car, which again costs over $200. So now my trip is getting close to $1,000, right? For a weekend trip. It's insane. Plus the drive, the flight. And then I read in the paper today, as of June 1, that flight will disappear. They had already disappeared it once before, then brought it back. It lasted a whole 3 weeks or something, and they yanked the plug finally. So at least I lucked out and had that window where I was able to. I don't know how do people see their relatives? It's sad. There's no affordable means of travel. What I would consider affordable, I don't know. And then, to make matters worse, and I think I had an incoherent tweet about this because the flight attendant was telling me to turn that off. But having driven from Green Bay to Milwaukee yesterday to turn in the rental car and then enjoy an hour or so in the lovely airport there, sarcasm intended, I get on the flight, we pack ourselves in, and then nothing happens. You know this story. Nothing happens. And I hear, I'm right up at the front, and I hear the person still not in the plane, but, say to the, I always want to say stewardess, say to the flight attendant, well, I got to keep this door open if you're going to have more fuel. And I'm thinking, you mean they don't have fuel in this thing yet? Because we were ready to pull back. And so the door remains open. There's all kind of hollering back and forth. Finally, a pilot comes on and says, this is never good. It's never good. And he said, I'm sorry for the delay. We are waiting for our flight plan because we are not going to be able to fly to Pittsburgh in our normal manner. He said there's this is how out of it I am. This is how much I didn't watch the news. Is it the G8 in Chicago or NATO?
My Google.
Which one is it? You can't do a thing. It's a bunch of world leaders, and people are being beaten up as usual. I thought it was the G8. I don't know. He said G8 meeting, I think he said G8, in Chicago. We've got a lot of VIPs, he said, flying in there at the moment. And the FAA has put a hold on all of you little people who are not allowed to get where you're going because there are prime ministers and presidents in the air very close to us because Milwaukee and Chicago are very close. So I'm thinking, great. Okay, so we get to sit here. We get to be rerouted because you can't be anywhere near, apparently, all their fancy-dancy planes coming in. And so you feel like okay, well, I've just been told what my status is, what my standing is. So we wait and we wait and we wait and we wait. And finally they get their instructions. And the pilot comes back on and says, all right, well, we have been rerouted. Now, unfortunately, this is a longer route. It's going to take us out of our way. But we're going to add about half-hour flying time. We're already incredibly late. Half-hour flying time. And he said, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be flying we're going to be flying north, which is exactly the opposite direction you'd want to go. We'll be flying north to Green Bay, he says. And I'm thinking, well, son of a bitch. I just drove down from Green Bay. Now you're going to fly me back to Green Bay? Yeah, but they're not going to land. They're going to fly back to Green Bay and then go way around across Lake Michigan, way north of Chicago, and then I guess drop back down into Pittsburgh, just so I guess we don't, just so Angela Merkel doesn't get upset that there's a plane within 100 miles of hers. I don't know. It's annoying. It's annoying. And then, as a result of that change in the flight plan, it turns out there wasn't enough gas on the plane to do that. So we wait more for we have to wait for a fuel truck, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thinking, I'm going to shoot myself. It's just, I don't have the right personality to travel. I don't know how these business people who travel regularly, who every day find themselves on these planes dealing with this crap. Don't even get me started about what the security was like at the Milwaukee airport. Beyond belief. So, I got back a hell of a lot later. I thought I was going to get back in time to sort of look through all the papers. I got back. I was so frazzled and finished. I couldn't do any of that. So, that's my sad story of travel in the U.S. of A. And just because I'm being personal, can I tell you one more story before we get into nitty-gritty stuff? One more story from Lynn Cullen's truncated summer vacation at her mother's house in Green Bay. Now, I do this every year. I go up to Green Bay and help my mom, who never needs help, help my mother plant large planters she has in her backyard. She has come to believe that I have some artistic ability that makes my pots just about as beautiful as any pots could possibly be. And so she's got to have me come in. I fly in to do the pots. Well, we went to a greenhouse. We did most of the pots on Friday, but on Saturday we went to the greenhouse to get a few more little things to fill in a few. Oh, I think we need a wave petunia there, and I'm not so sure we don't need a heliotrope right there. So off we went to the greenhouse. And my mother, myself, and my son, who had flown in a day later to surprise my mother, who was not expecting, which is very nice. So the three of us go off to this lovely little greenhouse. My son is pulling the little cart around where we're sticking flowers in it. And I'm over looking at some. I said, "Mom, look at this." And she starts toward me. As she starts toward me, I see her sort of look like she hit her leg on something, and she winces. And I said, "Oh, what'd you do?" And she said, "Oh, the corner of the cart." And she said, "It's okay." I look at her leg. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd never seen anything like it. It was like an anatomy lesson you don't want to have. She was filleted. I mean, filleted. Her There was a gash in her leg where I could see like, the anatomy of a leg. Here we have layers of fat. Here we have skin, bones, and it was unbelievably deepest cut and then down. It was about a 5-inch gash. And blood just started. Now, my son says I got hysterical. I said I took action. What were you doing? You were standing there like, I took action. I ran to somebody who said, we need towels. We need something to stop this bleeding. My mother's I'm running around. And you can't imagine how flat-footed people were. I mean, just flat. Everybody looked freaked. It took a while, finally got something to wrap her leg in. Somebody came running and said, "You've got to call an ambulance, I said, okay, fine. My mother screams, I don't want an ambulance. I said, Mother, you've got to get to the hospital. It was the most, I have never seen such a disgusting thing in my life. We didn't call an ambulance. We got some paper towels. She limped out to the car. I raced like a bat out of hell to the hospital. We got her into the hospital, although that's a treat. The emergency room was bursting at the seams. And these intake people at the hospitals, I guess they have to maintain this sort of calm demeanor because they're in an emergency room, because they're dealing with hysterical people, right? So the woman, we say, and the woman says, your name, please? Always very, very, absolutely no affect, just, and your date of birth? And I'm thinking, talk faster, do this faster. Woman's bleeding to death. Then a kid in a baseball uniform comes in with this big thing holding his eye, and he's standing behind my bleeding to death mother. It's just, it was unbelievable. Unbelievable chaos. So they actually didn't do a thing. They let her keep holding these bloody paper towels on her gash, stuck us in the waiting room. And I'm sitting there in the waiting room with my 90-year-old mom, bleeding. There was the worst gash I personally have ever seen. Never saw anything like that. And I couldn't take it anymore. So I got up. I never do this. I am not a pushy person. I'm not pushy. That might surprise you. I'm very non-assertive in my real life. I just like, I'm not. That's why I don't, when I have interviews, I don't ever take somebody on. It's not my style. I wait till they leave and then I stab them in the back. I'm a coward. I just don't like any. So anyway, I went back to the desk to the woman who was now enraging some new desperate person with her. And your address? And I said, excuse me. I said, that's a 90-year-old woman out there. She has an incredible gash in her leg, bleeding like a stuck pig. She needs to see someone now. Pause. Well, yes, triage will be there out soon. I said, that's what you told me 10 minutes ago. What does soon mean? I said, she needs to be seen. Then I got soon. And that's when I pulled out. Now, this is embarrassing, and some of you guys might think I'm a jerk for doing it, but it's my mother. I said, it might interest you to know, I said on the QT, that woman's husband, I fudged whether he was dead or alive. He is, as you know, dead. I said, that woman's husband, chairman of the board of the hospital. Granted, 15 years ago, but it doesn't matter. She still didn't appear to be interested in that at all. I went back. I said, I don't know what to do. Anyway, it was about 3 minutes later, someone did come out, called her in, and then we were in. Guess what room she ended up in? The emergency room she was in, and very lovely, by the way. But as I walked out the door, I saw there was a plaque on the side of the door, and it said, "This emergency room sponsored by Norman and Sherlyn Miller."
It's her.
That's my mom and dad. So how funny was it that she got stuck in a room with her name, literally her name on it. The plaque was right up there. So I took pictures. I tried to get it in a picture with her lying in the bed with doctors. Hey, Mom, smile. Anyway, it was grotesque. It was so ripped to pieces. They had to do layers of stitches. Had to try to get the bottom part sort of together. Then the top part, and there was one part where it's just... They said, well, this is just going to be an ugly scar. There is no way around this. So she was in there for 2 hours being stitched up. And then guess what she did? Here's what she did. She said, don't stay around here. They're just going to stitch me up. She said, go back and get those flowers.
Oh, my God.
Go back and get those flowers. Go home, and then you can come back here and pick me up. And I said, Mom, I really want to stay with you. Go get the flowers. I'm fine. What's wrong? I'm fine. So I went, got the flowers, blah, 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 came back. We still ended up sitting around for a while. Then I take her home. You know what she does? All right, let's plant those flowers.
Oh, my God.
An hour later, I saw her dragging a hose around the side of the house with about a 20-pound bag of dirt in her other hand. And then she said, well, I got to go fill that prescription for that antibiotic. I said, Mom, I'll go to no! I want to do it. She has such an aversion to being sick or incapacitated. She just refuses. So we gardened. She ran off to the drugstore. We watched the Preakness and got all excited because that horse did the exact same thing it did in the Derby. And then she got dolled up and we went to dinner. We went out. How many people do you know who spent more than 2 hours in an emergency room being, and really, I mean, being stitched up like that would just sort of continue on their day like nothing had happened? Most of us would milk it. Right? Oh, we would have to go to bed. We would have to be waited on. We would need lots of warm and cuddles and all this kind of stuff. Unbelievable. I always call her my 90-year-old mother, but in fact, she won't be 90 till August. We're going to go back for a party. But unbelievable. The only time she showed any emotion, it was so cute, she actually said to the nurse at one point, she said, and when she realized this, her lower lip started to quiver like a little kid's does when they're about to cry. I'd never seen this. She says she never cries. I'd never seen her. Her lower lip started to quiver. She said, oh, my God, does this mean I'm not going to be able to swim? And the nurse said, well, the doc's going to tell you he doesn't want you in the water. He said, I'd say maybe chlorinated, not swim in a river. He said, but I don't think they're going to want you to swim till the stitches are out. Might be a few weeks. And her lip starts going. So I said, Mom, you can't swim, but you can still play golf. And she brightened up a little bit. So she's got an 18-hole golf game tomorrow.
Oh my gosh.
She had absolutely no genetic input into me. None that anybody can ascertain. And I'm really pissed because I heard her on a phone call the next day telling her story to some friend, and she said, and my daughter got hysterical, and I'm thinking, hysterical? I'm the one who got something to staunch the bleeding. I'm the one who got you to the hospital. Maybe my voice was rising, and I looked a little freaked. But if I was hysterical, I was at least getting things done. And my son said, "You totally freaked out." I said, "What did you do? You were standing there doing nothing." And he said, "I was thinking about what to do." I was thinking you were hysterical. I said, "Yes, and have you finished now thinking what it was we were supposed to do?" Because by now, she would have bled to death next to the petunias. Oh, man. So, how was your weekend? Actually, I had a great time. Okay, I'm sorry. Thank you. I needed to tell somebody. It's just been exhausting. Let's get a break out of the way and we'll be back and get on to more serious subjects.
Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com or call Lynn at 412-316-3381. Lynn Cullen Live will return in a moment.
Go to bergbargains.com for great deals on tickets to the Opera, City Theater, Symphony, History Museum, and Carnegie Museums. Bergbargains.com, Pittsburgh's only online deal site where the deals don't expire. Check out this week's big deal. Over 40% off authentic laser lipo treatments from FDA-approved Zerona. Bergbargains.com.
It takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And at the end of the day, the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be you. Studies prove that reading to a child regularly dramatically improves reading skills, and kids who read well by 3rd grade are 4 times as likely to graduate. So United Way is asking you to make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because when a child advances, we all advance. Communities improve. The path to success starts long before graduation day, and the difference between a graduate and a dropout could be you. Be a reader, tutor, or mentor. Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Go to liveunited.org now. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
Get Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. Go to citypapermobile.com now for Pittsburgh City Paper's brand new mobile app. Get the latest restaurant reviews, event listings, movie times, and of course, Lynn Cullen Live on your smartphone. citypapermobile.com.
Now, it's back to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com.
All right, are we back? I was just sharing with Jess my disgusting pictures of the wound. Isn't that awful? People must do that all the time now. You're in a harrowing situation and you got to catalog it. I just did it so I could send it to Susan. Okay. Well, so there I was in the state of Wisconsin, where, there's this huge showdown in 2 weeks now. The attempted recall of the governor of Wisconsin with high stakes here. And my report back from the state is not real positive. I obviously talked to a lot of people, and to a man and woman that I talked to that was going to be voting to yank this despicable Scott Walker, they were all very, very skeptical that they were going to pull it off. Polls have shown that Walker is leading, and they've regularly shown it. No poll has showed the Democratic challenger, Tom Barrett, winning, which seems amazing to me, but the state truly is like split right down the middle, 50-50. So turnout is going to be a huge thing. This is one of those rare elections in America in which there are almost no undecided voters. Because often in these tight races, it's how those undecideds will break one way or the other. Well, Wisconsin has been living through this civil war, essentially, for a long, long time, and most everybody has taken a side. There's some anger at the Democratic National Committee for not giving more financial resources to the Wisconsin dump Walker effort, and they've given, like volunteers. They've given stuff, but they haven't given cold hard cash. And the reality is that the Democrats are being outspent by like 10-1, if not more, there. Because Walker, of course, has all those big fat cats, the Koch brothers et al., just showering money. You couldn't turn a corner in Green Bay without hitting a big billboard pro-Walker. The yard sign thing seemed to me a little more pro-Walker than not, although Green Bay is a very conservative city. I'm very nervous about this because a loss will reverberate into this election season, into this national election season. It will energize the conservative, ultra-conservative, anti-union, starve the poor Republican base. It will dispirit, I would imagine, some of the Democratic base that has worked so hard on this effort since day one, taking on Walker, and almost immediately when he got into office and started his mischief, and then that extraordinary successful effort to garner almost 1 million signatures from voters that then created this recall election. I don't know. The view from there, very, very iffy. The state's largest newspaper, the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, on Sunday endorsed the governor. The Green Bay paper seems, I don't think I've done it, they seem clearly on the side of Tom Barrett, which surprises me, but I guess it's changed since I lived there. I don't know. When Walker won election, he only won with 52% of the vote against the same guy who he's running against now for the recall, Tom Barrett. And without a doubt, he has alienated some of the voters that made up that 52% of the vote. But there have been people who did not bother to vote, who've been energized on both sides. And as I said, those who don't pay a heck of a lot of attention, there is no doubt that the airwaves, I mean, if you watch television there, you get both sides, but you're overwhelmed by pro-Walker propaganda. I thought this was a wonderful thing that was written in the Sunday Green Bay paper about this, written by a guy who's director of a watchdog group that tracks money in Wisconsin state politics and focuses on open government, sort of like a common cause, but it's not. And he says this: the Republicans are one-trick ponies when it comes to the economy, and their one trick doesn't work. Isn't working in Wisconsin, hasn't worked anywhere. call it what you will, trickle-down economics, supply-side theory, Robin Hood in reverse. It has been tried again and again for the past 30 years, and all it's done is make the rich a lot richer, the poor even poorer, and the middle class an endangered species. Now, some would say, well, that's just opinion. I don't think it's opinion. I mean, yeah, it's an opinion based on absolute fact. The Republican plan, which is to just keep pushing on the little people and giving everything to the rich so that they will create jobs and everything will be hunky-dory. It isn't working, hasn't worked. How many times do they have to see it doesn't work? It ain't working over there in Europe. And since they can't seem to come to terms with it, hey, Angela, I know you don't want to bail out all those lazy Mediterranean types, but starving them, which is your solution, ain't working. Catching up on some emails. Lynn, good for you for being your mother's advocate. I felt a little icky about it, but I don't care. It was my mom! He says, Lynn says, I think your father orchestrated the placement of your mom in the ER. He just wanted to say hello. Well, he felt like that benevolent hand of his definitely felt like it was there. Gigi said, I'm so enjoying the tale of you and your mom. Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. It was hardly enjoyable for us. No, actually, we were laughing at it when she was in the ER. Once she got back and was being cared for, we were laughing. She sounds a lot like my dad. Yeah, right. Because I remember you've told me about your wonderful father before. The guy who rode his bike until about a year before he died at the age of 88. He had pulmonary fibrosis and was on oxygen 24/7. He would take his oxygen off, go for a 20-mile bike ride, and come home and put his oxygen back on. About 4 years prior to that, he broke his hip when he fell biking. He had an artificial hip installed and right back on that bike in 6 weeks. At the age of 75, he biked while having a heart attack. He thought he'd pulled a muscle. I can only hope to have inherited those genes. I hope you do too. My mom will be just fine. She knows. I mean, it's going to be a hideous scar. It is, but so what? She just wants to get back in the pool. She swims half a mile a day, and she loves it. I mean, to her, that when she can't do that, she's sort of beside herself. But the week before I came, she did play 18 holes of golf 2 days in a row. And it's not an easy course she plays. And she'd be glad to tell you, stroke by stroke and hole by hole, how well she did, too. Because she ain't no duffer. She's good. She's lost some of her power. Doesn't hit as far, but she's, she'd still beat the pants off most of us. Definitely me. Yeah, it's amazing to have old people in your lives who set that kind of example. It really, it sure as heck is. And, they'd be the first to say that, they're blessed to have this capacity to do it. But like your dad, who had all the excuses not to be able to do all those things he did. I'm on oxygen. You want me to ride a bike? What are you trying to do? Kill me? No. He just went and rode his bike. And it's people like that who just keep on going that are just amazing. And granted, some literally cannot, but God, it's set the bar pretty high. But I'm very grateful to her for doing it. There's not one of her children that has that energy. As Susan, my sister, comes closest. And my brother and I have a lot of energy, but it's nervous energy. It's sort of like out of control. I don't know. Okay. You know the thing here about the teachers and how we're going to have to lay off 400 of them, and there's a big battle between the union, understandably, and the school board. School board wants something other than, or at least in conjunction with, seniority to make the choice of how you choose these poor 400 people who are going to lose their jobs. Because the one thing that the board wants, and the one thing anybody would want, would be to have the best teachers saved, if there were any way to do that. The union, it's very difficult to argue, as the union must, I guess, that seniority will protect those best teachers. It's not true. There are teachers, the problem with seniority, the downside of seniority, and I can argue both sides, believe me, but the downside of seniority is it does protect mediocre people. It does in any union. And as I've worked as a union person myself, and I've worked with other unionized people from other unions, and I've seen how it can be a godsend, that union, and then it can stand in the way of getting the job done right. So no system is perfect. I happened to bump into a member of the school board last weekend and suggested, boy, you got a problem, huh? And all I got was a head shake. Yeah, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough. So interestingly, we think of this as a local story, but in fact, if you were to pick up that national publication, USA Today, on their forum page, opposite the editorial page, there is a piece written by a woman from Los Angeles, and she talks about our predicament here and specifically zeroes in on one of Pittsburgh's elementary schools, Faison Elementary, which I believe is in the Hill. And she tells us what we already know, I mean, assuming we are reading the newspaper. But she tells this national audience that here you have a school, elementary school in Pittsburgh, located in one of the city's poorest neighborhoods. And it is a perfect example of a school that will be crippled by last in, first out. Last hired, first fired. It's going to be crippled. She said 1 year ago, after a rigorous application process, Faison selected more than 24 teachers, personally went after, picked them, handpicked them, 24 teachers to help revitalize the school, which needed help. That's just 1 year. So those 24 teachers that they brought in have only been there 1 year, but according to the author of this, the progress at Faison is already apparent. Discipline problems are way down. Students are much more engaged in learning. Teachers have built a system of collegiality and trust. However, before this summer is up, almost half of the teachers at Faison are going to be let go. And no doubt the 24 last hired and specifically hired to turn the school around will be among them. One of the veteran teachers there who's will keep her job, no problem, says this about these new teachers. They are some of the best teachers I have ever had the privilege of working with. Hope she doesn't get in trouble with the union for saying that. She's safe, but she won't pretend that using seniority as the sole arbiter is going to give a good result. The single most important factor in whether a child learns or not is the effectiveness of the teacher, is a bond, is some kind of a link that happens between a teacher and the student. I have said over and over again, in your own heads, in my head, we can all do this. On one hand, if you can do it on two hands, God, you are one lucky person. But on one hand, you can name the teachers in your life that changed your life, that sent you off on a path one way, or that let you know you were capable and were somebody. A teacher, usually they're often teachers who you hated at first, teachers who challenged you or scared you. Anyway, Yoli Flores, who writes this in USA Today, says, it just doesn't have to be this way. Sorry, you're last in the door, you're first out the door. That's just the way it works. You got to protect seniority. She suggests this. You can replace this last in, first out with a policy that still retains seniority as even a major factor if you want, but allows in other factors as well. And she points out that in the past few years, a number of states, including Illinois and Colorado, have developed sensible alternatives to this just black and white, last in, first out. However, in every case, and not surprisingly, the teachers' unions have steadfastly refused to budge. And they have an argument because all this laying off of teachers has a lot to do with budget stuff. So who would be most vulnerable? Senior teachers making the most money would sure look like the ones they'd want to pluck. And there's no trust here. So the union doesn't trust that the school board will make a distinction between a very highly paid senior teacher, who's a great teacher, and everybody knows it, and this very senior teacher who's been phoning it in for the last 10 years, can't wait to retire, hates his job or her job, right? Any of us who've been parents can go through the elementary school and the high school and point them out. We know who they are. The teachers know who they are. The board knows who they are. And yet the union is forced to protect them at the expense of letting go young, energetic, great teachers coming in. Not all the new ones are great, but they're great ones there. And this woman in USA Today points out something else. Who in their right mind would go into a profession, teaching, in which they know that no sooner had they gotten a job than they could be thrown out the door, even if they were incredibly good at it and everybody said the parents, the principal, the other teachers. You are unbelievable. We've never had anybody excite the kids like this. Why would anyone go into a profession in which you could get that kind of those accolades, and then, but I'm sorry, you've got to leave? It's insane. And it cries out for compromise. It cries out for compromise and trust. A measure of trust. Or are we beyond that? Can't do it anymore, huh? Maybe not. Okie doke. One more break. We'll be back.
Stick around for more with Lynn Cullen Live after this.
Pittsburgh City Paper is available now. Pick up one today for Rob Zombie, Brian Regan, the Abbott Brothers, and Will Eisner. Pittsburgh City Paper available at over 1,700 locations throughout Western Pennsylvania and on the web at pghcitypaper.com and on your smartphone at citypapermobile.com.
Gustavo and Vela wants to thank all of southwestern Pennsylvania, the USA, and the world for helping to liberate his native country of Equatorial Guinea. Equatorial Guinea has suffered 43 years of dictatorship, 43 years of human rights abuses, 43 years of corruption, and 43 years of kleptocracy. Even with $5 billion in oil revenue in 2011, the 700,000 citizens of Equatorial Guinea earn less than $2 per day. A proud Mount Lebanon resident, please help Gustavo and Vela usher in the 21st century by allowing freedom, democracy, and socioeconomic prosperity by the rule of law for the next 43 years and beyond. Email him at presidentandvela@yahoo.com to help free Equatorial Guinea.
You're listening to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Once again, here's Lynn Cullen.
Okay, here we are back in. The caller, are you still there?
Lynn?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah, this is Jarrod from Carnegie Mellon.
Jarrod from CMU. Hi.
Yes. Well, I've been hearing your conversation about the teacher situation. And, you know, I'm also of a split mind about it. You know, kind of seeing what's happening at Helen Faison is just, it just so showcases one of the problems.
Right.
But there is another side to the argument that needs to be stated in terms of why the union has been so adamant, and this is true almost everywhere. And you know, one of the things that it's so much that labor news isn't covered anymore. You know, it's almost like.
Have we lost you? We're losing you a little bit, Jarrod.
That almost any story that you hear about organized labor, the organized labor perspective is almost never presented.
I agree.
And in this particular case, one of the reasons why the union is as adamant as it is because it has had decades of experience, not just in Pittsburgh, but nationally. In so many instances, if they compromise, and I'm saying I actually believe they should compromise, but when they have compromised or they have kind of made for substantive changes, school districts turn around and screw them.
Yeah. I don't disagree.
You know, so it's like, I don't know where can you find a medium there? But you know, it's like when you talk to the teachers union, it's like 90% of the time when they make concessions, they get almost nothing back, or they get screwed. And so you know, it's like, boy, I don't know what to tell them, and I don't know what to tell parents who want better schools.
Well, then we got a problem, don't we? I mean, and I don't know. It's one of the things I often think about is one of the places that I actually take a lot of hope from is that it really looks to be like we have a younger generation of people who are so much more driven by consensus politics.
When you talk to people that are under, say, 35, it's like it's like talking to people from another planet. You know, they just are so much more committed to a consensus politics.
Well, that's
even young, like evangelicals. You know, it's just like just a different mindset.
Well, that's a ray of hope, if in fact that's the case.
Yeah, I posted a number of stories about that on my blog, and it's just, you know, that's one area. I actually do have some hope.
You have to go? What?
What's that?
What did you? I thought you said I actually have to go. What did you say?
No, I said that's my hope.
Oh, that's your hope. Now, you know, here's my silly hope. I'm thinking of like when my marriage broke up, and it was an amicable marriage, and amicable breakup, and how we divvied up. I mean, I almost would like to see, you know, okay, you have these teachers represented and the board represented, and they sit down and they literally go teacher to teacher, and there can be certain saves that each side does, but, you know, couldn't they agree on? Do you know what I'm saying? If both sides had a place at the table and there could be agreement on, where the teachers could like actually say, I agree, this senior person could go. We will let them go. Do you know what why?
Yes, and
each one has a pick, and then the next pick, and then next.
You would think that would be doable. And it's just, boy, there's so much history.
Well, and the history, as you said, has bred total distrust, and so I'm more so from the union to the the board. So but my sense of this board is that it is made up of fair-minded people. I don't think there's anyone. I don't know of anyone on that board who's just out to like screw the union. I really don't.
That's true. But you know, the thing about it is you get a nice, reasonable board like that's in there right now, and then 10 years or 5 years from now, you'll get a really kind of a yucky board in there that'll pretend like the conversations they had now will never happen. So whatever agreements get made now will suddenly become forgotten.
Yep. That's that slippery slope thing. Oh, if we give them this, the next thing you know. But my God, we're talking about, you know, there's all this talk of Pittsburgh turning a corner, Pittsburgh, you know, looking up. And at the same time, our public schools look like they're going down. You can't have both. They don't work together. The schools have to be reinvigorated. Now, you know, where do we look for some answers? You can look to, of course, Harrisburg. You don't get answers you want to hear. A lot of this trouble is a direct result of them refusing to, for instance, tax the gas companies so that you could fund public education.
Correct.
Jerks. Just
jerks.
But,
I mean, the whole issue of taxation, the way it's based now, breeds unfairness.
Yes.
It's just astonishing. And I was just, what is it? I forget. USA Today had their list of best high schools, and we actually had two of the best in our state here in our area. And I wish I could remember which two they were. So it's like, you know, we are perfectly capable of producing good schools in this area.
Right.
But it's just, you know, it's like you got to have deal with a lot more fundamental things.
And the whole system, the funding system, is so corrupt, so ludicrous. No one in their right mind would say it should be based on property taxes, because quite clearly, then, if you live in a poor community,
the whole issue of taxation, the way it's based now, breeds unfairness.
Yeah.
You know,
really. Hey, Jarrod, can you hear me? We got to go. I think he's dropped off again.
I think
in that odd way?
We heard his computer in the background, I think.
You did?
Like that voice.
We heard a computer that was odd. Yeah. Very odd. I don't understand. Oh, well. There's so many things we don't understand. All right. That's it for today's program. Enjoy the day, and we'll return tomorrow. My sister in St. Louis will join us. Okay? Toodaloo.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.